What is a top priority of a wedding planner? The guest list, the venue, flowers, then there's the dress, makeup even. And in the run-up to the big wedding, well, the bride and groom might turn their attentions towards the tipple. Ahead of the big day, there's an entire country to plan for, and we might have just found the perfect place to find something to wet your whistle. Well, we've come to the Windsor and Eton Brewery because we're trying to find out if we can find the perfect tipple ahead of the royal wedding. Have you had any ideas of what you're going to be doing for the big day in April?
Yeah, sure. I mean, quite simply, we think that because we're a brewery for the Windsor and Eton community, we've got a duty. We've got a duty to brew a beer for the royal wedding, and so one of our followers has come up with the concept of calling it a Windsor Knot. So, which gets the the Windsor Knot analogy, but also gets the town where his family seat is, where he's educated, and where he's tying the knot with Catherine. And so we think it's a perfect name for a beer. We're going to do a light pale ale in style, 4.5% in gravity, and we're going to brew a beer that everybody likes. This is not just a beer for beer heads at festivals. This is going to be a beer that is perfect for party drinking, for street partners to celebrate the royal wedding.
So give us an idea about what's been happening brewery-wise in Windsor over the past few hundred years.
Well, when we opened Windsor and Eton Brewery last year, we were the first brewery in Windsor in about 80 years. Windsor used to be a famous brewing town. For many centuries, there were a dozen breweries in Windsor, exporting beer down to London, all over the UK. But when we opened Windsor and Eton Brewery last year, on St George's Day 2010, we were the first brewery operating in Windsor in almost 80 years. Because during the first half of the 20th century, there was a big wave of consolidation in the brewing industry, and about 3 or 4 breweries in Windsor were closed down in the late 20s and 1930s. Now, since then, the last few years, a lot of new breweries have started in the UK. Typically a lot more up north, but there's not been one in Windsor in that time. And so we feel we've got a golden opportunity really to develop a brewery here for the community, for the visitors, and also once again start exporting beer into London.
Fantastic. So, Willie, give us an idea of what you're doing at the moment here.
Well, we're brewing our golden ale today, Night of the Garter, and we mashed in at 7:30 this morning. So in this mash tun here that Jim's just digging out just now, we mashed in with a mixture of pale malt and some crystal malts, and we let that stand for an hour and a half while we had some breakdown, the enzymic breakdown of starch to sugar. We then ran that through the underback into our copper, and we've been boiling that since then with hops. Having boiled in the copper for almost 2 hours with our bittering hops, we're then transferring now through our hop back, which you see below, with our aroma hops. We use 2 different hops there to give the flavour for a golden ale, and we run it then through a plate heat exchanger into fermentation vessel, and that's where we add the yeast to start the fermentation.
It'd be great if we can have a look at the yeast as well, if you can show that to us.
Come along here, let's have a look.
Okay, so you've just opened up here, and it looks like a massive head on the beer at the moment. Can you tell us what's going on here at the moment?
Sure. This big meringue that you can see here is beer fermenting that we brewed 2 days ago. This happens to be Guardsman, our best bitter, and as we ran the beer into the fermentation vessel, we pitched it with yeast, and the yeast has multiplied. It's a little single-cell organism. It's multiplied. It's formed a big head in it, and it started fermentation. And in that fermentation, as you know, it's converting the sugar in the wort into carbon dioxide, which makes it fizzy, and alcohol, which gets you drunk.
Excellent. So we've got a slightly different look on this one. There's no head on this one, so what's happening in here?
Sure, this is the wort we're running in from today's brew into fermentation vessel to make this golden ale we're brewing today. So you can smell it's really sweet, and it's sweet because you can smell the hop, you can smell some of the sugar in it. You know, it's fantastic, isn't it? And later on, we'll add the yeast to that. We'll pitch it with yeast to start the fermentation going.
Fantastic.
So here we've got some beer that we brewed about a week ago. And before the fermentation finished, we put the cooling on this vessel.
Okay.
And we do that to arrest the fermentation while there's still some sugar left in the beer. And we do that so that when we rack it in the casks, we get some subsequent secondary fermentation in the cask. And we need that because that's what makes cask conditioned beer cask conditioned. That's what gets the fizz into our beer.
Oh, this is the bit I've been waiting for now. Any good wedding planner must obviously go through some rigorous testing. So I think I'm in for a long afternoon. Look at that. Cheers, mate.